You are looking at a 19-year-old girl in seat 1A, first class. She is calm, she is quiet, and she is surrounded. In front of her stands a flight attendant, her face a mask of smug authority. Beside her stands an airport police officer, his hand resting on the flex cuffs on his belt. The click as he unsnaps one echoes through the silent cabin. They've accused her of being a threat. They've demanded she leave. But they've made two mistakes. They don't know who she is, and they have no idea who she's about to call. They didn't just try to remove a passenger. They're about to cancel a $50 million contract and their own careers. The air in the first-class cabin of Meridian Airways Flight 212 was already stale with entitlement. It was a 4-hour PM flight from JFK to SFO, the Tech Express, as the route was known, and the cabin was filled with the self-important. Into this world stepped Maya Washington. At 19, she was poised and observant, her eyes taking in the cabin with a quiet intelligence. She wore a simple, dark grey Stanford University hoodie, the cardinal S, a subtle mark of her pedigree, and black leggings. Her hair was pulled back in intricate, neat braids. In her ears, she wore the latest noise-cancelling earbuds, listening to a podcast on quantum computing. On her shoulder was a well-worn leather satchel, a gift from her father. She was flying back after a final round interview for a coveted summer internship at a high-level AI research lab in New York. She was tired, but she was hopeful. She found her seat, 1A, the best seat on the plane, the window seat in the bulkhead. The passenger in 1B, a woman in her mid-50s named Diane Holloway, was already settled in. Diane was a caricature of new money. Her hair was a helmet of blonde spray, her jewelry was loud, and she was already complaining to a flight attendant about the quality of the champagne. As Maya paused to stow her satchel in the overhead bin, Diane looked up. Her eyes raked over Maya, from the hoodie to the sneakers, and her face tightened in a way that was instantly recognizable. It was a look of sour disbelief, as if a dog had just wandered into a 5-star restaurant. "Excuse me," Maya said politely, pulling her earbuds out. "Just need to get my bag up." Diane didn't move her legs from the aisle. "Honey," she said, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness, "I think you might be turned around. The coach cabin is that way." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the plane. Maya didn't sigh, though she wanted to. She'd dealt with this her entire life. "I'm in 1A, Mom. Thank you." "Are you sure?" Diane pressed, not moving. "They really shouldn't let you all wander up here. It's confusing for you." "I'm sure," Maya said, her voice firm, no longer polite. "Seat 1A. Now, if you could please move your legs." The lead flight attendant, Brenda Jenkins, a woman with a severe haircut and a name tag that seemed to be pinned on like a Medal of Honor, glided over. She had witnessed the entire exchange. A good flight attendant would have diffused. Brenda, however, was not a good flight attendant. She was a petty tyrant of a 200-foot aluminum tube. "Is there a problem here?" Brenda asked, directing the question to Diane. "This girl is bothering me," Diane huffed. "I think she's lost. She's claiming this is her seat." Brenda turned her professional scorn dial to Maya. "Miss, I need to see your boarding pass." Maya met her gaze. "Why? You didn't ask her for hers." "That's because I," Diane cut in, "am not in a hoodie, trying to sneak into a seat I didn't pay for." "Policy," Brenda said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Boarding pass. Please." With deliberate, slow movements, Maya pulled her phone from her pocket, unlocked it, and opened the Meridian app. She held the screen up, the QR code, and Washington, Maya, Seat 1A, Executive Platinum, displayed in bright, clear text. Brenda's eyes flickered for a millisecond. Executive Platinum. That was a high-value customer, but the flicker was gone, replaced by irritation. The narrative she'd built in her head of a lost coach passenger had just evaporated. Now, she was just a young black girl who, in Brenda's mind, didn't look the part. "Fine," Brenda snapped, turning away. "Stow your bags and sit down. We're trying to depart on time." Maya, her jaw tight, placed her bag in the bin and slid into 1A. She strapped herself in, put her headphones on, and stared out the window. She felt the familiar burn of casual racism, the dull ache of having to prove, over and over, that she belonged. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to her father. Maya. Boarded. Passenger in 1B is a nightmare. Flight attendant is worse. The usual. A moment later, a reply. Dad. Handle your business, champ. Don't let them dim your light. Call me when you land. Maya. I won't. Love you. Dad. Love you more. Now go to sleep. You've earned it. She closed her eyes, trying to let the thrum of the engines calm her, but the battle for Flight 212 had only just begun. 20 minutes later, the plane was still at the gate. A minor maintenance check was the captain's excuse. The first-class cabin was restless. Brenda Jenkins was in her element, conducting the pre-flight drink service with the air of a queen granting favors. She served Diane Holloway's second glass of champagne with a conspiratorial smile. She served the man in 2C his scotch. She served the woman in 1D her sparkling water. And she walked, deliberately, past 1A, ignoring Maya as if she were part of the bulkhead. Maya watched her. She waited. She was thirsty, and on principle, she was not going to be ignored. After Brenda had made her full pass and returned to the galley, Maya politely pressed the call button. The bing chimed. Brenda ignored it. Maya pressed it again. A second bing. Brenda emerged from the galley, her face thunderous. She marched to 1A. "Is there an emergency?" she hissed, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "No," Maya said, keeping her voice level and low. "I'd just like a ginger ale. You skipped me." Brenda's fake smile was a rictus. "Pre-flight service is a courtesy, miss. Not a right. We are busy preparing for takeoff. You'll get it when we're in the air." "You served everyone else," Maya pointed out, still quiet. "Her, him, her. Everyone but me. I'd just like a ginger ale, please." This simple, polite request, this refusal to be invisible, was the spark. "She's just trying to be difficult," Diane Holloway announced from 1B, loud enough for the entire plane. "She's one of those, entitled. Probably got this ticket with a EBT card, for all we know." The cabin went silent. The racism, no longer a microaggression, hung in the air, thick and toxic. Maya turned in her seat. "Ma'am, I have no idea who you are, but you're going to stop talking to me. My ticket is paid for, and what you just said is disgusting." "Oh, now she's threatening me," Diane yelped, clutching her pearls as if Maya had physically struck her. "Brenda, did you hear that? She's threatening me. She said I was disgusting. I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe with this person." Brenda seized the opportunity. This was her out. This was the narrative she wanted. "Mom," Brenda said, her voice now cold and official, pointing her finger at Maya. "You are creating a disturbance. You are threatening another passenger. You need to lower your voice." "I am not raising my voice," Maya said, her heart starting to pound. She could see where this was going. She'd seen the videos. "I am sitting in my seat. She is the one yelling. She is the one making racist comments." "That's it," Brenda said, her eyes flashing with a sick, victorious light. "I am not going to be harassed by you. You're an unruly passenger. I'm unruly for asking for a ginger ale." You are a threat to this flight, Brenda declared. You've threatened another passenger, and you're non-compliant with a flight crew. That's a federal offense. She turned on her heel and marched, not to the galley, but to the cockpit door. She knocked, spoke to the co-pilot, and then went to the main cabin door, which was still open. She picked up the intercom phone to the gate. Yes. I need airport police at gate B32 immediately. We have an unruly, non-compliant and threatening passenger in first class. Yes. A threat. In 2A, a man named Mark Fielding, a senior blogger for a major tech publication, had been watching the entire thing over his laptop. He had recognized Maya's last name on her boarding pass, Washington. He was familiar with her father, the legendary CEO of Synapse Dynamics. Quietly, Mark angled his phone, hit record, and aimed it right at seat 1A. The return to the gate was not necessary. The jet bridge was still attached. Within 90 seconds, the tense quiet of the cabin was broken by the thud of boots. 2 airport police officers entered the plane. The first was Officer Miller, a man in his late 30s with a face that was weary and impassive. He was the talker. Behind him was Officer Grant, younger, buffer, and radiating a "don't mess with me" energy. His hand was already resting on his belt. Brenda met them like a conquering hero, pointing dramatically at Maya. There, seat 1A. She's been threatening passengers and crew. She's disruptive, and we need her off. Diane Holloway added her victim testimony. She was screaming at me, said horrible things. I'm shaking. I'm literally shaking. I'm afraid she'll do something. Officer Miller approached Maya. He stood over her, his shadow falling across her. She was still just sitting in her seat. "Ma'am," Miller began, his voice a practiced monotone of authority. "My name is Officer Miller. We've received a complaint from the flight crew that you're being disruptive and have threatened another passenger. Is that true?" "No, officer, it is not," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly, but her words clear. "This woman, Diane Holloway, made several racist comments to me when I boarded. The flight attendant, Brenda, then refused to serve me. When I asked for a ginger ale, they both ganged up and lied, claiming I was a threat. I have not left my seat. I have not raised my voice. I am the one being harassed here." Miller glanced at Brenda. Brenda shook her head. "She's lying. She's aggressive. I am the lead flight attendant, officer, and in the interest of the safety of my cabin, I am ordering her removed. The captain has authorized it." This was another lie. The captain was still in the cockpit, trying to sort out the maintenance issue, oblivious. Miller sighed. This was just paperwork he didn't want. "Ma'am, I don't care who said what. The flight crew has the final say. They're not going to fly with you on this plane. I'm going to have to ask you to gather your things and come with me." This was the moment. The precipice. "No," Maya said. "I am not moving. I have a valid ticket for this seat. I've paid for this seat. My name is Maya Washington, and I am in seat 1A. I have done nothing wrong, and I am not getting off this plane." Officer Grant now stepped forward, shouldering Miller aside. He was the muscle. "Listen, kid, we're not going to ask you again. You can walk off this plane or you can be carried off. Your choice. But you're getting off. Don't add resisting arrest to interfering with a flight crew." He unhooked a pair of plastic flex cuffs from his belt. The sharp click as he pulled them free was the loudest sound Maya had ever heard. The cabin held its breath. Mark Fielding's camera was still rolling. "You're going to arrest me?" Maya's voice cracked, but not with tears, with disbelief. For what?" "For trespassing," Grant said, his eyes dead. "You've been ordered to leave by the crew, and you're refusing. That's trespassing. Now last chance. Get up." He reached down, his hand closing over the armrest near Maya's arm. "Don't touch me," Maya said, pulling her arm back. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She did exactly what her father had always taught her to do. She took a deep breath. She unlocked her phone, and she hit the speed dial for Dad. Officer Grant scoffed. "What, calling your mummy? That's not going to help you. Phone, now. You're interfering with—" He was interrupted by a deep, powerful voice emanating from the phone's speaker. Maya had put it on speakerphone and hit the video call button. "Maya, what's wrong? You're on the plane. I thought you were taking off." The face that appeared on the screen was that of Robert Washington. He was in a sprawling, glass-walled boardroom, a city skyline behind him. He was flanked by 6 other people in suits, all of whom had stopped talking to look at the screen. "Dad," Maya said, her voice finally trembling. "Dad, they're trying to arrest me. They're trying to take me off the plane." Robert Washington's face, warm and kind a second before, instantly turned to ice. He took in the scene, the officer's uniform, the hand on the flex cuffs, the smug face of Brenda Jenkins in the background. "Officer," Robert's voice boomed, cutting through the cabin. "My name is Robert Washington. You are currently on a live, recorded video call with me and the entire executive board of Synapse Dynamics. State your name and badge number. Immediately." Officer Miller hesitated. "Sir, this is a private security matter." "It was," Robert interrupted, his voice a low growl. 2 seconds ago, it became a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. You are attempting to physically remove my daughter, Maya Washington, from a flight for which she has a valid ticket. Officer, I will not ask again. Your name, your badge number, and your supervisor's name. Now." Miller, suddenly very aware of the phone in 2A, also pointed at him, stammered. "Officer Miller, badge 942, Airport Authority. Our supervisor is Captain Rodriguez." "Officer Miller," Robert said, his tone lethally calm, "you are being manipulated. My daughter is an Executive Platinum member. Look it up. The woman in 1B, Diane Holloway, and your flight attendant, Brenda Jenkins, have filed a false, racially motivated report." Brenda's face went white. Diane Holloway looked like she'd seen a ghost. They knew that name. Synapse Dynamics. It was one of the biggest tech companies in the world. "Dad," Maya said, "he's trying to arrest me." "He won't," Robert said. "He won't touch you. Maya, stay on the line." Robert Washington did not hang up. He held the phone so Maya could see him. He muted his end, turned to his assistant and said, "Get me Thomas Prescott on the line. Now, I don't care what he's doing." To the boardroom, he said, "Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. A 10-minute recess. We are about to restructure a major corporate contract." He unmuted his phone. "Maya, I'm still here. Officer Miller, you are now a material witness. I strongly suggest you stop taking orders from a flight attendant and start calling your supervisor." Then, Robert's assistant handed him another phone. He punched a number. "Tom, Robert Washington." "I'm fine. Listen, I'm in the middle of a board meeting, and I'm simultaneously on a video call with my daughter, Maya. She's on your flight 212 at JFK, seat 1A. Oh, you know the one. The Tech Express." Robert paused. "Well, here's the problem, Tom. Your lead flight attendant, a Brenda Jenkins, and a passenger named Diane Holloway just conspired to have her arrested. Yes, arrested, with cuffs. Why? Because, and I quote, she looked like she didn't belong and then had the audacity to ask for a ginger ale. No, I am not joking." The entire first-class cabin was dead silent, listening to one side of a call that was clearly happening at the highest possible level. "So, Tom," Robert continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "here is what's happening. as of... Checks watch. 4:17 p.m. Eastern, the Synapse Dynamics $50 million a year corporate account with Meridian Airways is terminated. All 12,000 of our employees are, as of this moment, banned from booking with your airline. Our legal team will be in touch. Officer Miller's jaw was on the floor. Brenda Jenkins was clutching the galley wall, looking faint. What's that, Tom? How can you fix it? You can't. You've got 30 seconds to explain to me why the video of your employee and two of New York's finest trying to cuff a 19-year-old girl in her paid-for seat shouldn't be the new Synapse commercial. 30 seconds. And Tom? The clock is ticking, and my plane is waiting. He didn't hang up. He just waited. The silence that followed was absolute. It was broken by the cockpit door flying open. Captain Evans, a veteran pilot with silver hair and a no-nonsense reputation, stormed out. He had clearly been on the radio. His face was not just red, it was a deep, furious purple. He wasn't looking at Maya. He wasn't looking at the cops. He was looking at Brenda Jenkins. "Brenda!" he roared. The entire plane jumped. "What did you do?" "Captain," Brenda stammered. "The passenger. She was unruly, non-compliant." "Shut up," Captain Evans yelled. "Just shut up. I've just been on a call with the CEO of this airline, our CEO, who was on a call with Robert Washington of Synapse Dynamics. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Brenda had no answer. She just shook. Captain Evans turned to the two police officers. "And you two, you were going to arrest her? On the word of a flight attendant who's just cost this airline its biggest corporate account? Get off my plane." "Sir," Miller said, trying to regain some authority. "We were just responding to a crew complaint. And I," the captain fired back, "am the pilot in command. And I am telling you, your presence here is a threat to the safety of this flight. You have harassed my passenger. You have delayed this flight. You are off this plane now, or I will have you arrested for interfering with a flight." Miller and Grant, their faces ashen, recognized an order they could not refuse. They looked at each other, turned, and disappeared down the jet bridge without a backward glance. The captain then turned to the cabin. He looked at Diane Holloway, who was trying to sink into her seat. "And you," he said, pointing. "Ma'am, you're done. Get your things. You are being deplaned. Now." "What?" Diane shrieked. "I'm the victim. I am an Executive Platinum member. You can't do this." "I can," Captain Evans said. "And I am. You filed a false report. You harassed a passenger. You are a real disruptive passenger. Get your bag, or you'll be joining Officer Miller in the terminal." Sputtering, grabbing her oversized Louis Vuitton bag, Diane Holloway did the walk of shame, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. The entire cabin watched her go. Finally, Captain Evans turned to Maya. He looked at the phone, still active in her hand. "Mr. Washington," he said, his voice now exhausted and respectful. "This is Captain Evans. Sir, I don't have words. I am profoundly sorry for what has happened on my aircraft. Your daughter should never have been treated this way." "She stays," Robert's voice came through the speaker. "The people who did this, go." "That brings me to my next point," the captain said. He turned to Brenda Jenkins, who was openly weeping in the galley. "Brenda, you are relieved of duty, effective immediately. Get your roll aboard. Go to the operations office. John Salter is waiting for you. You are not crew on this flight." "You can't," she sobbed. "I can, I'm the captain." As Brenda, shamed, walked off, the captain picked up the intercom. His voice boomed through the entire aircraft. "Folks, this is your captain speaking. My apologies for the significant delay. We have had to remove several disruptive individuals from our flight today. As a result, we are now experiencing a mandatory crew staffing issue." He paused. "We will be returning to the gate to acquire a new lead flight attendant and to refile our flight plan. I'm afraid this is not a short delay. This is, for all intents and purposes, a cancellation of our original 4 p.m. departure." A groan rippled through the entire plane. The karma had hit. Because of the actions of 2 prejudiced women, 200 people were now grounded. The flight was, effectively, cancelled. The taxi back to the gate was the longest 10 minutes of the passengers' lives. The aircraft, which had been a tinderbox of tension, was now a tomb of awkward, seething silence. The powerful engines that had been spooling up for a transcontinental flight were now in a humiliating reverse thrust, crawling the plane back to the terminal it had just, with great effort, tried to leave. Maya Washington was still in seat 1A. Her phone was still in her hand, the video call with her father, Robert Washington, still active. He hadn't hung up. He was a silent, powerful, digital witness. The adrenaline that had flooded her system, turning her fear into icy resolve, was now ebbing, leaving a profound, shaky exhaustion in its wake. The rest of the plane was a symphony of frustration, but none of it was directed at her. The cancellation announcement had unleashed a ripple of groans and quiet curses. "My connection to Tokyo is gone," a man in business class muttered, furiously typing on his laptop. "I'm missing my son's rehearsal dinner," a woman whispered into her phone, her voice thick with tears. "Can you believe that woman?" someone in coach said, loud enough for others to hear. All that, over a ginger ale. The thud of the jet bridge, reconnecting to the fuselage, was a heavy, final sound. The hiss of the L1 door opening felt, to Brenda Jenkins, like the opening of a gallows. She was right. The first person to board the aircraft was not a new passenger. It was John Salter, Meridian's head of JFK ground operations. He was a man with the grim, hurried expression of a mortician who was double-parked. His eyes, sweeping the first-class cabin, were 2 chips of ice. They ignored the passengers, ignored the cockpit, and landed, with crushing finality, on Brenda Jenkins. She was still cowering in the forward galley, clutching her seniority pin as if it were a crucifix. "Brenda," Salter said. His voice was not loud. It was terrifyingly low. It cut through the cabin's ventilation noise. "My office. Now." "John, it was a misunderstanding. I can explain. She stammered, tears of self-pity streaming down her face, ruining her mascara. "A misunderstanding is when you spill coffee, Brenda," Salter said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "A $50 million misunderstanding is when our CEO calls my personal cell, screaming your name, your wings, your badge. Hand them over." This was the ultimate humiliation. A flight attendant's wings are their badge of honor, their very identity. Sobbing, her hands shaking so violently she could barely unpin it, Brenda handed over her gold wings. "Get your roll aboard," Salter commanded. "You are not to enter the terminal. You will wait for me at the bottom of the stairs. You are done." As she made the walk of shame, pulling her bag from the crew closet, she had to pass Maya in 1A. She couldn't even look at her. She just stared at the floor, a broken, disgraced woman, disappearing into the jet bridge. The moment she was gone, 2 more figures boarded. The first was a kind-faced, older woman in a fresh Meridian uniform. The second was a man in a crisp, dark blue uniform, his hat tucked under his arm. Captain Rodriguez, the supervisor for the entire Port Authority Airport Police Detachment. The new flight attendant, whose name tag read Susan, went straight to Maya. She crouched in the aisle, her voice a warm, welcome balm. "Ms. Washington," she said, "my name is Susan. I'm your new lead flight attendant, and I'll be taking care of this cabin for the rest of for whatever is next." She offered a small, sad smile. "First, can I please get you that ginger ale? Or perhaps some of the champagne that woman clearly didn't deserve?" Maya finally let out a shaky breath, a half laugh, half sob. "The ginger ale," she said, her voice hoarse. "The ginger ale would be perfect. Thank you, Susan." "On its way," Susan said, before turning to the rest of the cabin with an air of pure, no-nonsense competence, instantly restoring a fraction of order. Captain Rodriguez, however, was not there for customer service. He had a radio earpiece in. He was getting reports from his men who had already intercepted Diane Holloway in the jet bridge. "Sir," he said, respectfully addressing Captain Evans, who was still in the cockpit doorway, "my apologies for the intrusion. We are handling the situation." He then walked down the jet bridge. In the brightly lit tube, Diane Holloway was attempting to bluster her way out. "I am the victim here. I have been harassed. That girl. And now this. I am an executive platinum member, and I demand to be let go. I will have your jobs." Captain Rodriguez stepped in front of her. He was a tall man, and he seemed to take up all the air in the small space. "Ma'am, your status with the airline is not my concern," he said, his voice flat and cold. "My concern is that you filed a false, harassing report against another passenger, which you then escalated to a false security report to the flight crew. We have video. We have sworn testimony from over a dozen passengers and the flight crew. You have delayed a federal flight, and you have, in fact, committed a crime." Diane's face went from puce to sheet white. What?" "You are being detained, ma'am," Rodriguez said. "You have the right to remain silent. I strongly suggest you start." He nodded to two of his officers, who gently but firmly took her by the elbows. Her walk of shame wouldn't just be off the plane. It would be to the airport's substation. Back on the plane, as Susan was pouring Maya's drink, the man in 2A, Mark Fielding, finally leaned over. "Ms. Washington? Maya?" he said, his voice quiet. "My name is Mark Fielding. I'm a senior editor with Tech Giga. I saw everything, and I recorded everything." He held up his phone. "I have it all. From the moment you boarded. The coach comment, the EBT comment, the refusal of service, Brenda's lies, the officers, all of it, start to finish." Maya's eyes went to the screen of her own phone, to her father's face. He nodded slowly. "Mr. Fielding," Maya said, her voice finding its strength again. "What do you want to do with it?" "This isn't just a bad service story," Mark said, his eyes intense. This is everything. This is race and class and the abuse of authority. With your permission, I'd like to post this. Right now, the world needs to see what you just went through." Maya looked at her dad. "Dad?" Robert Washington's voice came through the speaker, clear and strong, and everyone in first class heard it. "Post it, Mr. Fielding. Post it all, and send me the link. Tag Synapse Dynamics. Tag Meridian Airways. Tag the Port Authority. My daughter has nothing to hide. Let the light in." Mark Fielding nodded. "Yes, sir." He turned, and his fingers began to fly across his screen. The story was live before the plane had even been assigned a new departure time. Meanwhile, in the airport's police substation, in a windowless, fluorescent-lit briefing room, Officer Miller and Officer Grant were sitting, their arms crossed, fuming. They had been pulled from the gate and told to wait here. The door opened, and Captain Rodriguez entered. He was no longer the calm, collected supervisor. His face was a mask of cold fury. He didn't say a word. He walked to the smart TV on the wall, plugged in his phone, and hit play. It was Mark Fielding's video, already at 50,000 views. They watched in silence. They watched Diane's racist EBT comment. They watched Brenda's smug refusal. They watched Maya sitting calmly, simply asking for a drink. And then they watched themselves. They watched Miller's lazy, "I don't care who said what." They watched Grant, puffing his chest, looming over a 19-year-old girl. They heard the click of the flex cuffs he had so eagerly unholstered. Rodriguez stopped the video and turned. "You see that?" he said, his voice a low growl. "You see what you looked like? You see what you did? You had a," she said, with a 19-year-old girl, who, by the way, is an executive platinum, top-tier passenger, and a 50-year-old Karen. And your first instinct, your only instinct, was to believe the Karen and go for the cuffs. "Captain," Grant tried. "The flight attendant said she was a threat." "The flight attendant lied," Rodriguez roared, slamming his hand on the table. "And you were too lazy, too biased, or just too stupid to do 30 seconds of basic investigation. You didn't de-escalate. You didn't assess. You just followed the most convenient, most prejudiced narrative. You two aren't just an embarrassment to this uniform. You're a liability. You're off airport duty. As of now, hand your credentials to the desk sergeant. You're on desk duty at the central office, indefinitely. And sensitivity training is the start of your problems. Get out of my sight." Back on Flight 212, it took 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours to find a new crew. 3.5 hours for the baggage handlers to find and remove Diane's and Brenda's suitcases. 3.5 hours for Captain Evans to file a new flight plan. The cabin was a strange community. Susan and the new crew had opened the snack bins and were giving out free drinks, snacks, and premium headphones to the entire plane. The atmosphere was no longer angry. It was just weary. When Maya finally got up to use the restroom, a hush fell. She walked the aisle, and as she passed, a businessman in 4C reached out and gently patted her arm. "You handled that with class, young lady," he said. As she passed Coach, a woman whispered, "Thank you." She was not the problem. She was not the unruly passenger. She was, as everyone on that plane now knew, the only person who had been telling the truth from the very beginning. The Boeing 747's wheels screeched against the tarmac at San Francisco International, the sound a punctuation mark on the longest, most surreal flight of Maya Washington's life. It was 11:58 p.m. Pacific Time. The plane was nearly 4 hours late. A smattering of exhausted applause rippled through the cabin. It wasn't the usual, "happy to be here" clap. It was a, "we survived this bizarre ordeal" clap. The tension from the incident at JFK had evaporated, replaced by the stale, weary acceptance of a long-haul delay. As the plane taxied, Maya's phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark Fielding, the tech blogger from Seat 2A. "Mark, video is live. 1.2 million views. And climbing. Fast. Meridian's comms department just issued a public statement. Your front page news. Hope you're ready." Maya just stared at the text. She didn't feel like front page news. She felt like a 19-year-old girl who had been in a metal tube for 8 hours and just wanted her bed. The bing of the seatbelt sign turning off was the signal. As passengers began to stand, the new lead flight attendant, Susan, made a beeline for 1A. She crouched in the aisle, her voice low and sincere. "Ms. Washington," she said, her warm eyes crinkling. "In my 30 years with this airline, I've seen it all. But I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that with the grace and steel you did. I wanted to tell you that. We are all deeply, deeply sorry." "Thank you, Susan," Maya said, offering a small, tired smile. "You were wonderful. Thank you for the ginger ale." She was one of the first to deplane. At the cockpit door, Captain Evans was standing, his hat in his hand. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since JFK. "Ms. Washington," he said, and his voice was thick with formal contrition. He didn't just look apologetic. He looked ashamed. "On behalf of Meridian Airways, and with my personal, profound apology, I want to thank you for your patience." "Captain," Maya nodded. "Our CEO, Mr. Prescott, has already been in touch with your father, I'm told. Repeatedly. Your entire flight has been refunded. 250,000 bonus miles have been deposited in your account, though I understand if you never want to fly with us again. Mr. Prescott will be calling you personally tomorrow to apologize. He's devastated. This has become a very, very significant event for our company, Ms. Washington." Maya simply nodded. "You did the right thing when it mattered, Captain. Thank you." She walked down the jet bridge, the silence of the SFO terminal at midnight, a stark contrast to the drama in New York. Her leather satchel felt like it was filled with bricks. Her legs were stiff. She expected to navigate the empty terminal, find the car service her father had no doubt sent, and collapse in the back seat. But as she stepped out into the arrivals hall, she saw him. He wasn't flanked by security. He wasn't on the phone. He wasn't Robert Washington, CEO of Synapse Dynamics. He was just Dad. He was leaning against a pillar, wearing jeans and a Howard University sweatshirt, his hands jammed in his pockets. He had cancelled his entire day, refused to fly his own jet, and had simply waited. He had waited for his daughter's flight, no matter how delayed, to land. Her eyes welled up. The steel and composure she had maintained for 8 straight hours finally cracked. She didn't run. She just walked, her pace quickening, and buried her face in his sweatshirt. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her so tight it almost hurt. He kissed the top of her head. "You okay, champ?" he whispered. "Yeah, Dad," she mumbled into his chest, her voice thick. "I'm okay. I'm just so tired." "I know," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I know. You did everything right. You handled your business. You let your light shine. Now, I get to handle mine." The final hard karma landed for everyone else over the next 48 hours, as Mark Fielding's video and the accompanying audio from other passengers became the #1 trending story in the world. For Diane Holloway, Diane was not, as she had shrieked, a victim. She was, as the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey was concerned, a perpetrator. She was charged that evening with filing a false report and interfering with a flight crew, a federal offense. The viral video was her social undoing. She was identified within an hour. Diane Holloway, wife of hedge fund manager Richard Holloway of Greenwich, Connecticut. Her country club's board held an emergency ethics meeting and suspended her membership. Her husband, Richard, a man whose entire reputation was built on cold, hard numbers, was apoplectic. "They're calling me at the office, Diane!" he reportedly screamed, his voice echoing through their marble foyer. "My biggest client, BlackRock, sent me a one-line email. Is this you? Get it handled. You didn't just get kicked off a plane. You just cost me $1 billion management fund. To add financial injury to social insult, Meridian Airways legal team, on direct orders from Thomas Prescott, filed a civil suit against her for the full cost of the cancelled flight, the 80,000 Zesser in fuel, the $150,000 in vouchers and rebooking fees for 200 passengers, the crew overtime, and the FAA fines. She was not just a pariah. She was bankrupting her own life, one racist comment at a time. She was, for life, banned from Meridian and all its partner airlines. For Brenda Jenkins, Brenda's 20-year career was over before Maya's flight even left the ground at JFK. John Salter, the operations chief, had fired her on the spot. But the hard karma was just beginning. The Federal Aviation Administration, upon reviewing the video and the captain's official pilot-in-command report, opened a formal investigation. Brenda was called to a hearing. She tried to play the victim, citing stress and a difficult passenger. The FAA panel was unmoved. They had the video. They had the audio. They had her lie about the captain's authorization. The ruling was brutal and swift. Ms. Jenkins, you utilized a false security threat, a claim of a threatening passenger, to resolve a customer service dispute. You weaponized the police, endangered a passenger, and compromised the safety and security of the entire flight. Her flight credentials were not suspended. They were permanently revoked. She was blacklisted from every major U.S. and international carrier. The union, seeing the evidence as indisputable and indefensible, refused to take her case. Her career in aviation, her one source of pride and power, was over. For Officers Miller and Grant, Captain Rodriguez, a man who had worked his way up from the beat, was furious. The video of his two officers, one lazy and one aggressive, was a stain on his entire department. The internal affairs investigation was a formality. "You had one job," he roared in a briefing room, slamming the flex cuffs from the video onto the table. "Assess, de-escalate. You didn't even try. You let a flight attendant write your report, and you went straight for the hardware, over ginger ale." Their demotion was immediate and humiliating. They were stripped of their airport authority credentials. Their sensitivity training was not a class. It was a punishment, where they were forced to take the remedial course with new recruits. They were permanently reassigned. Graveyard shift, Sector 9. The long-term parking lot. Their job, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., was to sit in a drafty booth and patrol the P9 garage, a place where the only threats were teenagers trying to siphon gas. They had traded their tactical vests for reflective yellow ones. It was a cold, boring, and complete professional death. For Meridian Airways and Robert Washington, the call between CEO Thomas Prescott and Robert Washington was the stuff of corporate legend. Prescott began, his voice shaky, with apologies, refunds, and promises of internal review. Robert let him talk for 5 minutes, then cut him off. "Tom, shut up. Just shut up. You're talking about your stock price. I'm talking about my daughter. You're talking about a $50 million account. I'm talking about your employee, your brand, threatening to put my 19-year-old child in cuffs because she didn't look the part. Do you think I care about your Q4 earnings?" "Robert, please," Prescott begged. "Tell me what to do. I'll fire anyone. I'll donate $1 million to a charity of your choice. Just don't pull the contract. It'll gut us." "Pull the contract?" Robert said, his voice dangerously calm. "That's easy, Tom. That's lazy. It lets you off the hook. You'd issue a press release. You'd blame one bad apple, and nothing would change. I don't want your apology. I don't want your donation. I want accountability. I want structural change." There was a long pause. "Here's the new contract, Tom," Robert said. "The $50 million a year Synapse account is gone. We're flying private from now on. But that $50 million, you're still going to get it, and it's going into an escrow account, and Meridian Airways, you're going to match it. It's not a travel fund anymore, Tom. As of today, we are jointly announcing the Maya Washington STEM Scholars Program, a $100 million 10-year fund dedicated to providing full ride, 4-year university tuition, and flight school scholarships for young Black, Latina, and minority women, the exact women your airline thinks don't look the part. And you, Tom, your entire executive board, you're not just funding it, you're going to sit on the selection committee every quarter. You're going to learn their names, you're going to see their faces. You're not just going to fix this, you're going to become the solution. You're going to earn your partnership with me. Prescott, trapped, stunned, and seeing the genius of the move, agreed. The punishment wasn't just to pay, it was to participate. 1 year later, the epilogue was not a quiet refund. It was a revolution. Maya Washington, now 20, stood on a stage inside a massive Meridian Airways hangar at JFK. Behind her, the first ever class of the Maya Washington STEM scholars, 50 young, brilliant women of color in matching blue blazers, sat with their families, tears of pride in their eyes. Thomas Prescott was there, in the front row, next to Robert Washington. "A year ago," Maya said, her voice clear and strong, echoing through the hangar, "I was right here at this airport, in seat 1A. I was told I didn't belong. I was told I was a threat. I was told to be quiet. A lot of people, a lot of you here, have been told the same thing. They want you to be quiet. They want you to move to the back. They want you to believe that seat isn't for you." She gestured behind her. A brand new Boeing 787 Dreamliner was parked in the hangar, its nose pointed toward the open doors. "Meridian Airways asked me what to name this plane," she said. "They wanted to call it the Spirit of Maya. I said no. I named it the Catalyst, because that's what this is, a catalyst for change." She looked at the 50 scholars. "Today, you are all in 1A. Today, you are all executive platinum. They didn't just try to cancel a flight. They ignited a movement. They thought they could ground one girl. Instead," she finished, her voice soaring, "they gave all of us wings." The hangar erupted. Robert Washington didn't clap. He just stood up, his eyes fixed on his daughter. The karma hadn't just hit back. It had built a legacy. That, right there, is the difference between simple punishment and true justice. Brenda Jenkins, Diane Holloway, and Officers Miller and Grant. They all got what they deserved. They got punished. Their careers were ended, their reputations were shattered, and their lives were permanently diminished, all because of a casual, arrogant prejudice they thought they could get away with. They learned the hard way that the world is, in fact, watching. Theirs is a story of hard karma, a perfect, satisfying, and immediate fall from grace. But what Robert Washington did, that was something else entirely. That was justice. He could have just pulled the $50 million contract. That would have been easy. That would have been simple revenge. But that wouldn't have changed anything. It would have just been a press release, a stock dip, and business as usual the next day. No, Robert Washington did something far more powerful. He took their broken, prejudiced system and forced it to fund its own cure. He didn't just cancel a flight, he created an entire fleet. He turned an act of racist aggression into a $100 million legacy, ensuring that for the next decade, and the decade after that, a flood of brilliant, qualified, and powerful young women of color, women who look just like Maya, would be in those first-class seats, in those cockpits, and in those boardrooms. Brenda and Diane tried to cancel one girl's flight. In response, Robert Washington launched 1,000 careers. That is a checkmate. That is how you win. So I have to ask you, what do you think was the most satisfying part of this story? Was it Brenda losing her wings in the jet bridge? Was it Diane Holloway being charged with a federal crime? Or was it that final, brilliant move by Robert Washington, turning a $50 million loss into a $100 million gain for an entire generation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe that accountability is king and that hard karma always hits back, then I need you to do 3 things for me. First, hit that like button until it turns blue. It tells the algorithm that this is a story that matters. Second, share this video with everyone you know. Post it on your Facebook, your X, your everything. These are the stories that need to be heard. And finally, if you are new here and you love this kind of content, please subscribe to this channel. We are dedicated to bringing you the most incredible, most satisfying, and most shocking true-life stories of justice and karma every single week. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you never, ever miss a single update. Thank you for watching. And remember, be kind to everyone you meet. You never know who you're talking to or who they're about to call.